everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. I'm your host, Scribe Light. Hope everyone's doing well today. What is today? Well, today is Triple Feature Day. Triple feature, what does that mean? Well, I got curious about something. There is a term that has been floating around there for a while, or I guess technically two terms, but I'm pretty sure they refer to effectively the same thing. And that is cultural competence and or proficiency. I've heard these terms before, off and on over the course of the last 4 years, but they never really sort of caught in my brain as anything to be more curious about than anything else. But recently it was brought to my attention that this concept, again, I don't know if it's one or two or combination thereof, maybe either just another name for critical race theory or an off-growth of it or what. Now, while I'm sure that there are far more complete studies out there and critiques of what these are, I do not know. And so in order to educate myself, as it is my responsibility to educate myself on things, I put together 3 different videos that purportedly cover this subject. One, as you can see on the screen now, is a segment from PBS Newshour. The second one will be a yearly or quarterly report from a college on their own cultural competence program. And the third will be from a random educator who posted a video on YouTube for an assignment in regards to cultural competency or proficiency. So getting 3 different perspectives on one general subject to maybe learn what it is or find out that no one really knows what it is, because we've seen that before too. So that's the aim of today's broadcast. But before I get into that, a few hellos to those of you who've decided to join me on this beautiful Sunday morning. Ivor Singatorix, Brittany Holland, Sean Uli, Matt Barnes, Featherless Bipedal, Jamie Melquist, Kiever Dam, Mike R., Scanner Daftly, No Name, The Gay Rascal, Nobody Not Me, and I think that's everybody that I see. Oh, Devil Fruit Zero. And hello to all of you who may be lurking at present or in the future. Hello. All right, so I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to start off with the PBS Newshour segment in regards to this. I don't know where this is going, but we'll find out. Now, just for editorial reference, I have stringed these videos together, so there will be a brief blank spot of footage in between each one. And where I have been able to tell the presence of it, I have removed any musical notes or cues in there on the off chance that that stuff is copyrighted for some reason. So if the sound suddenly cuts out on the source video, that's why, but God knows I'll probably be talking over it during the time. So anyway, all that being said, let's learn something.
Racial disparity in academic achievement remains one of the leading problems in American education, both at the K through 12 and the college level.
Right. So, and of course, if there is a disparity between racial demographics, there's only one cause for that, I'm sure.
A number of studies show greater diversity in the teaching profession can address some of those concerns.
Oh, so we're back to the teachers need to look like their students?
Hari Srinivasan has a look at a teacher training program that's aiming to increase diversity in the classroom and improve results all the way through college. It's the latest story in our special series on rethinking college and part of our regular education segment, Making the Grade.
And just as a note, as far as I recall, this particular segment is about 2 years old now. I think it was when it was originally posted. But at least by implication, I have heard this argument before. The way to teach particular students of a particular color is to make sure that their teacher is also the same color. Right.
Actually, class, are we subtracting time or adding time?
Adding time.
We're adding time.
Francisco Martinez will earn his teaching certificate this month, but the 26-year-old teacher-to-be wants to be more to his students.
Oh, Sinatra Says is in the chat. Hello, Sinatra Says. And Zalbla, Dagger 3K, Mike Savage. I'm sure there was a blarg in there somewhere. Good morning, all.
My goal is to be a good role model
Martinez, who was born in the U.S. to immigrant parents, says that his own teachers in school were overwhelmingly white. He hopes his background will resonate with elementary school students in Fresno, California.
Because the students in Fresno, California are racists? I mean, there's not really any other conclusion you can draw other than the students themselves will reject a teacher on the basis of the teacher's skin color under that theory.
Where the district's enrollment is 67% Hispanic.
I feel like I can relate a lot to the students. Some of the experiences they're going through, I've seen myself.
And it's impossible for anyone not of your skin color to relate to the students and they're growing up, I guess.
And I guess in a sense, I can kind of provide another ear or another person to rely on.
Martinez may be right.
I'm going to keep my welcome short.
Cassandra Herring heads an alliance that helps prepare teachers for diverse student classrooms.
We know from research that having a teacher of color actually can move student achievement.
I see. So, well, I think that almost goes without comment.
It actually can help keep kids in school and persist to college.
According to the National Center for Education Statistics, more than half of all public school students are either racial or ethnic minorities, and that number is only rising. At the same time, 80% of their teachers are white.
Oh, no. Well, then, I guess the only solution is to hire teachers first and foremost on the basis of skin color. I mean, if simply the color of the teacher's skin is going to determine the quality and outcome of students' education, well, why are we even having a debate? I mean, who cares about credentials? Who cares about ability? It's all about the skin color, as our teacher just told us a moment ago, and as you are strongly implying right here. Well, I mean, if statistics say so, if research says so, well then, hey, let's throw out the Civil Rights Act. Let's just start employing racial discrimination in hiring practices at schools. It's obvious, isn't it?
Experts in higher education are trying to fix that gap.
We need to make sure that every single ed prep program is training every single teacher candidate to bring about student achievement gains for all learners.
Were they not doing that previously? I mean, if you're going to tell me that there were teacher prep programs that were intentionally disadvantaging certain teachers on the basis of their skin color, I'll be right next to you and criticizing that and saying that reforms are necessary. But that's not what you were saying a minute ago.
While minority students have made gains in recent years, an achievement gap still exists between the races. According to the U.S. Department of Education, in some grades, the gap in reading and math achievement between whites and their Hispanic and Black classmates remains in the double digits.
Where are the parents? Regardless of skin color, where are the parents in this equation? What involvement is there in the home? Is it all the teacher's responsibility? Or, sorry, is it all the teacher's skin's responsibility? Because I'm getting mixed messages here. Thank you, Matt Barnes. You don't have a teaching degree, but you're the skin tone of the students. You start Monday. I mean, that's what the lady said. She didn't say anything about, their qualifications, their abilities, nothing. As long as their skin color was correct, then student achievement increases. So if that's true, like I say, there's really not this isn't a difficult question. It sounds like there is a panacea to this problem.
I'm so excited that we are here today for the spring convening.
Herring's alliance, called Branch Ed, launched a new initiative with colleges across the country to improve teacher preparation programs.
When we go into our classrooms, capture what you see and hear teachers saying and doing.
This month, the alliance met in Fresno at Vang Pao Elementary School to observe student-teacher candidates from California State University, Fresno.
Did they observe the candidates because they earned their way there, or were they selected because of their skin color? I don't want to have to ask that question, but unfortunately, they've caused me to have to.
Including Francisco Martinez's class.
How many of us thought that was false? Raise your hand.
Observers used a rubric to assess the role of diversity in teaching and learning.
Oh, Oh, so the observers were able to tell how much the skin color radiation affected the learning environment? Okay.
By looking through the lens of that tool, it gives educators, these faculty, the opportunity to reflect back on what they're doing on their own campuses.
Well, it doesn't matter what they're doing on their own campuses. The question is, do they reflect the students' appearance on their campuses? You weren't talking about action. You weren't talking about quality of behavior or merit of ability. You were talking about appearance, aligning with the student population, which will equate to better student outcomes. I'm now you're confusing me.
Come back from our observations. We want to process the information and then go deeper with it.
One observation came from Nikesha Williams, an assistant professor from North Carolina A&T State University.
There was one Black female student in the classroom. She did not participate in sharing out. I didn't hear that girl's voice in the classroom holistically at all.
There's research that supports this marginalization of Black females, particularly as it relates to math. And it struck me that as a teacher, you think about how can you be more inclusive?
How can you be more inclusive? Why, by highlighting skin color as a divider. I mean, that's how you become more inclusive. You make skin color a value factor in evaluating both the student and the teacher. So, okay.
How can you dispel myths? How can you support this disproportionate representation?
Does teaching need to change as our demographics and as our country changes?
I think it does.
Obviously, you think it does, but you don't think it does need to change on a quality level. It's more aesthetics.
I think the race-blind, color-blind, language-blind, culture-blind educational system of the past is failing us. It's obsolete because our classrooms are becoming so diverse. To not equip teachers to know how to really leverage that diversity in a positive way to move forward student achievement is only going to increase the achievement gap.
You want to leverage diversity, and yet your first statement was that the overabundance of white teachers is the problem. Okay, well, that's an interesting way of saying racial discrimination. Thank you, Gay Rascal. Looking through the lens of, unquote, on a bingo card. That's a very specific phrase. I don't know. Yeah, I'd be concerned that unless that exact phrase was ever said, we'd always be mulling over whether or not to fill it in, kind of thing. So, yeah, the bingo card squares have to be a balance of something relatively abstract that we're not waiting necessarily for a very specific chain of words, but specific enough that we can recognize it when we see it. So I'll think about it, but I'm inclined not to. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to put on there, because there is something that I have seen time and time again through TEDx's specifically that I've never made a square for. So I'm thinking about that. Thank you, Gay Rascal. Okay, back to this.
A shift toward what's called culturally responsive teaching, or cultural proficiency, is gaining traction among educators.
Mm-hmm.
What are our attributes that we're measuring?
An attribute is a...
To better serve students of color, teachers create conversation about inequities and cultural relevance.
Teachers create conversations about inequities and cultural relevance. What does that mean?
The time she got on what?
On the bus.
On the bus. Everybody say on the bus.
On the bus.
Francisco Martinez uses Spanish references in his lesson plans.
Because obviously only Latino people can speak Spanish or comprehend Spanish, I guess.
For example, there was one math lesson I led once. We were working with distances. So I said, so-and-so wants to go get an horchata beverage. How long does so-and-so have to walk to get that beverage?
Really? This is what separates a culturally competent teacher from just a teacher? A reference in a language other than English. Okay.
Before I could finish the sentence, so many kids were saying, oh, I've had horchata, horchata is great.
While
Wow, yeah. Did they get the answer right? I mean, what is the goal here?
California State University at Fresno has been successful at recruiting many minority teacher candidates. Enrolling African American males is still a challenge.
Enrolling candidates. So did they specifically seek out candidates on the basis of their skin color? I'm not quite sure where that falls into the equal opportunity laws of this country.
Let's see hands. Eric, what's different about it?
We do need to improve on how we recruit African American males. I think nationwide that should be at the forefront of the discussion.
Well, what is the problem? I mean, setting aside the fact that you're going to be focusing on getting people employed based specifically on race and gender, which, boy, oh boy, does that sound great. You've done a lot to try to do this, to try to fix this problem. So what exactly is the barrier?
Most of our students naturally blend into...
Laura Alamillo is the Dean of the School of Education at the university.
And so the work we do in the Kremen School is to make sure that all of our educators come out fully prepared to work.
She recently visited local Black churches to try and attract more African Americans toward a teaching career.
Well, I'm curious if she'll say what she thinks, at least, the difficulty is, in her opinion. Thank you, Matt Barnes. I live in Vermont. If my teacher asked me how far I had to walk to get a gallon of maple syrup, they'd get hit with a spitball. I mean, that was a fairly weak example of how relevant the quote-unquote cultural competency or cultural proficiency theory works. A word or an item used in a story problem that the kids are familiar with. Okay, well, if he had said something like, how far do I have to walk to get my next pack of Pokemon cards? I wonder how many kids in the audience will be like, oh, I know Pokemon. Or what's the distance between here and the computer in your house to go play Fortnite or Minecraft or something? I mean, okay. But yes, thank you, Matt Barnes.
I think it's time to reach out to this particular community.
You have been. You say that you've been making efforts and it hasn't been working. Why hasn't it been working?
To see if maybe I could spark some interest. It's not only the presence of a teacher of color, it's the lens, it's the mindset of coming with these, just really valuable assets.
What valuable assets? What valuable assets are inherent to skin color? I am very, very curious to know. But more so, I am curious to know, after so many efforts put forth to recruit teachers of a particular race and gender, what, in our speaker's opinion, is the obstacle or obstacles? I mean, I have a feeling they're not going to tell us here, but I'd honestly like to know what she thinks the problem is in achieving the goal that she's seeking.
What does 1 hour and 30 minutes represent?
Ultimately,
what does 1 hour and 30 minutes represent? I don't know. Can you put that in the form of a culturally relevant question?
Cultivating great teachers is likely to be the best recruiting tool of all.
Most teachers, if you ask a teacher, why did you become a teacher? Their why is because they had a teacher, one teacher that inspired them.
And obviously, inspiration can only come from a teacher who looks like you.
Encourage them to be the best they could be and push them.
For the PBS Newshour, I'm Hari Srinivasan in Fresno, California.
And for those of you listening at home, there's a card that's up right now that says Hispanics make up roughly 1/4 of all K through 12 students. However, fewer than 10% of all teachers are Hispanic. And I have to again ask, as I've asked any countless number of times over the last 4 years in videos that have promoted the same idea, so what? And setting aside my question of so what, all right, if this is the problem as you see it, what is the solution? Because I'm honestly challenged to think of a solution other than hiring teachers on the basis of their skin color. And beyond that, if the argument is that a student has a better chance of achieving academically if their teacher looks like them, then what is the advantage of having a diverse classroom insofar as the students, right? I mean, if you want to get the best outcome for all the students, and the best outcome comes from having a teacher that resembles the students, then shouldn't you have racially segregated classrooms with racially segregated teachers? Only like shall teach like, etc. Because given the rhetoric, I'm not quite sure what the best answer is, if not that. If we follow what they are saying to its logical conclusion, maybe it's the poverty of my imagination, but I'm not quite sure where else that leads if you truly believe that that is the solution. So now we're probably going to have a minute here of silence and then a blank spot while the next video comes up. But okay, so that was video number 1 on cultural competency or cultural proficiency. And so, as I understand it from that first video, cultural proficiency / cultural competency equates to a teacher resembling, at the very least, the students, and or a teacher who both resembles the students and then can make references that the students may recognize that aren't necessarily I don't know, American in origin or English in language. There's only a few salient points that I was able to draw from that, and a lot of things that were left unexplained. But thank you again, Gay Rascal. 50% of students are male. Most teachers are female. Well, now, Gay Rascal, how would you solve that obvious problem of demographic disparity? I mean, since we're talking about gender, the problem obviously is sexism. So I think you and I both know the answer. We need to recruit more female students. I'll just leave that one there. Okay, so after a moment here, we'll start in on the next video, a report update piece from a college I forget the name of, but we'll find out momentarily in a second. Okay. Cultural Proficiency and Equity Update from NP, whatever that is, 2018 through 2021. All right. And again, if there's silence, it's because I've cut out some musical number that isn't necessary, so you'll just have to survive.
Hello, North Penn community. I'm Deanna Waters,
Hello.
Director of Curriculum and Equity, and soon to be your Assistant Superintendent, along with Dr. Bauer.
Oh, congratulations on the, I'm assuming, promotion. Good for you.
I've had the good fortune of working in our amazing school district for my entire career.
Wow.
Over the years, in my various roles in North Penn, I've seen an increase in demographic diversity, as well as a greater need to understand and appreciate differences.
That sounds, well, understand and appreciate differences. Okay, what does that look like?
As a classroom teacher, I served on the Closing the Achievement Gap Committee. And about 10 years ago, I became a member of the Cultural Proficiency Committee led by former administrators.
Okay, so how were your results in closing the achievement gap since you've been doing it for, I guess it was kind of ambiguous, but it sounded like at least 10 years or several years. And how's that gone? And what did you do to implement those changes? Would be my next question.
In 2018, Dr. Jenna Rufo, former assistant superintendent, and I took over as co-chairs of this hardworking committee. We had done a lot of research and analyzed various data points prior, so we were ready to implement action steps.
Such as, and research of what?
In November of that year, North Penn.
Whoa, wait a second. They cut away from that transition so quick, I didn't have a chance to read it.
Prior, so we were ready to implement action steps.
Okay, So before it disappears, and for those of you listening at home, there is a title card up, like sort of a PowerPoint presentation. North Penn School District, Conversation Around Race and Ethnicity, or CARE Symposium, C-A-R-E Symposium. You know, I love it when things are wrapped up in a friendly sounding package. It makes me so Patriot Acty.
In November of that year, North Penn staff, students, parents, and board directors participated in a CARE Symposium to share our goals and ideas and to solicit feedback from the community on our 2018 to 2021 plan.
Okay.
Currently, I have the distinct pleasure of leading the Cultural Proficiency and Equity Executive Committee, which is comprised of some phenomenal administrators and parents.
Okay, so it's been, what, 3 years now since that started? So what have you done and what have the results been?
In collaboration with our consultant, Dr. Barbara Moore-Williams, this committee works to ensure that the 4 goals we created enhance our practices so that North Penn School students have positive experiences and are afforded equitable opportunities and access to a viable curriculum. Each goal is carried out by co- and tri-chairs who lead dynamic subcommittees made up of teachers and administrators who come up with actionable, measurable items.
And when I say I'm talking, you know, corporate speak, sort of like meaningless buzzwords and such. That's all it is. You could say word salad. I mean, it hedges on that because it's just on the edge of making some kind of sense, but it's mostly just sort of filler vocabulary.
This entire committee is successful because the members are passionate, committed, and advocate for all students.
That's why they're successful? I thought the outcome of the results of their work would indicate success, because you can be really passionate about something and be an utter failure unless you're setting your goal at just the enthusiasm of the participants. I don't assume that's your goal.
In addition to these district-level committees, we also have cultural proficiency and equity teams at each building.
Well, wait. What were the 4 goals? Are we going to get to that? Because you said there were 4 goals you're trying to reach. And unless I know what the goals are, and then unless you actually tell me how close you've come to either achieving or not achieving those goals, how am I supposed to, as the observer, measure success? Oh, wait, no, success is just based on passion? Again? What?
These staff leaders and principals are also dedicated to this work, and many attend additional training after school monthly.
Okay.
They do an awesome job of facilitating professional development sessions, providing resources, and creating a welcoming environment in their schools.
When are you going to get to the results of your efforts? Here's where we were in 2018, and here's where we are in 2021. I'm assuming there are some place cards coming up for that, right? Some PowerPoint cards. That's got to be coming.
I cannot thank them enough for going above and beyond for our students.
Okay.
As you know, we cannot do this work alone, and it is always easier to meet success when schools and families are working together. Therefore, in 2020, we formed a Parents in Equity, or PIE group.
Okay, so CARE and now PIE. There's an additional joke in there, but being that it's a Sunday morning and this is a family show, I'll refrain.
This parent group, now led by Mrs. Alexis Drolet and Mrs. Lauren Wilson, has been an integral part of carrying out our efforts. Although the PIE members serve as liaisons between the district and the buildings, we are also grateful for the parent volunteers who support cultural proficiency and equity work at their respective schools. Thank you for partnering with us.
What if they objected to it? What if you had a parent or several parents who, for whatever reason, objected to it? What would you do then? I mean, would you only accept or listen to parents who agreed with your initiative? Or would you take on any criticism from people who didn't? Well, parents or staff or anybody else. What happens if you have someone who's not on board with this? And admittedly, I'm not quite sure what this is yet because you haven't told us what the goals are or what you do. I'm assuming that is coming.
Check out our website for more information and note that updated goals will be posted this fall. Feel free to contact your building principal if you want to get involved. And now you will hear from the co and tri chairs about the progress we are making.
Okay, all right. So now we're going to hear the specifics because I've been obviously complaining about not hearing those. Okay, this is all just preamble. Goal 1. Oh boy, okay, good. Goal number 1, to increase the knowledge, skill, and practices of all staff related to cultural proficiency and cultural responsiveness, which will reduce the achievement gap / opportunity gap at the North Penn School District. Okay, so the achievement gap is caused by the lack of knowledge, skill, and practices of the staff in cultural proficiency. Okay, so the students are not achieving because the staff are not culturally proficient. Okay, or culturally responsive. I'm not quite sure what that means either. Okay, so that is the cause of the achievement / opportunity gap. It's the teacher's fault and their lack of knowledge or responsiveness. Okay. I obviously didn't cut out the musical cue to this one, so I'm going to mute the sound for a second just to be safe. All right. Okay, now we're on to a person. So sorry about that, just making sure.
Hi, I'm Jackie Giamarco, Curriculum Supervisor of Professional Learning
and
Special Content Areas. I'm one of the tri-chairs for our Goal 1, Cultural Proficiency and Equity.
So you're part of a triumvirate? Tri-chair doesn't sound that great. I'd say triumvirate. Sounds much more fancy.
Committee. The goal of our committee is to increase the knowledge and skills and practices of staff related to cultural proficiency. This year, we had monthly professional development time dedicated to cultural proficiency and equity. Each session was based on our North Penn framework for culturally responsive teaching.
Whoa. Okay, so now they're showing on the screen for those of you at home a website or a lesson plan or something. So I'm going to, I don't think she's going to read it, so I'm just going to go over it. North Penn Framework for Culturally Responsive Instruction. North Penn School District seeks to develop a community that values and adapts to diversity. We strive to acknowledge, respect, understand, and celebrate the dynamics of racial and cultural differences. Through the development of a culturally proficient staff, the establishment of structures that promote equitable opportunities, and partnerships with families and students, our school district will create an environment of respect where all members of the school community are empowered to learn, grow, and appreciate one another. Well, that all sounds very benevolent. Okay. Our diversity makes us unique. Languages spoken, English language learners, or ELs, students receiving special education services. Okay.
Responsive teaching. These sessions could not have been possible without our cultural proficiency equity team leaders and cadre members.
Okay, and again, backing up, apologies, so I get the full picture here. What is culturally proficient teaching? Culture is central to learning. Okay. It plays a role not only in communicating and receiving information, but also in shaping the thinking process of groups and individuals. I suppose that's true, depending on what you mean by culture. Culturally proficient teaching is a pedagogy that recognizes the importance of including students' cultural references in all aspects of learning and understanding the impact of one's own cultural beliefs and attitudes on teaching practices. Understanding the impact of one's own cultural beliefs and attitudes on teaching practices. Well, if I tell the teacher that my culture says that homework is a sin, what is that teacher supposed to do? Just wondering. I don't know. And then there's some more stuff at the bottom that's about to be cut off, but it says framework for culturally responsive instruction. There's a list in a circle, but I can only see a few of the bubbles. Number 2, cultural competence and racial awareness. Number 3, reshaping the curriculum. Okay. Number 4, active and student-centered instruction. Active and student-centered instruction. That's bizarre. Number 5, positive guardian and family perspectives. What if you had a family and or guardian who was not down with the sickness? What would you do with that student? What would you do with that family member or guardian? Number 6, teacher as facilitator. I thought teacher was an educator, but what do I know?
Have been possible without our cultural proficiency equity team leaders and cadre members. Thank you so much for your support as facilitators. We're looking forward to continuing this work next year as we address the additional principles of the framework.
Hi, I'm Rachel Earle.
Whoa, wait. Maybe it's coming. Were you not going to tell us what the results of your efforts for the last 3 years have resulted in? Like, what? I mean, something to say we've been doing this work for at least 3 years and here's how things have improved? Maybe that's coming.
Early, a curriculum supervisor for secondary humanities and English language development.
Okay.
And I'm also a tri-chair for our Goal 1 Cultural Proficiency and Equity Committee.
Okay.
In addition to staff-created professional development delivered by our facilitators, we have worked with a variety of excellent consultants this year. This includes Dr. Barbara Moore-Williams, Dr. Ron Whitaker, Dr. Eddie Fergus, Cornelius Minor, and Matthew Kay.
Okay, and this has resulted in what in regards to your goals?
Teachers were not the only group that received professional development this year.
Oh.
Assistants, paraprofessionals, transportation, administrative assistants, security, food and nutrition, administrators, and nurses.
So every level of the school has to be trained in cultural proficiency, even the bus drivers. Okay.
Our administrators also participated in a book study this year that included 2 books, Not Light But Fire by Matthew Kay, as well as We Can't Teach What We Don't Know by Gary Howard.
Whoa, back up. This goes right into the TED Extra I did the other day. We can't teach what we don't know. And what's the subheading to this? White teachers, multiracial schools. Okay. Well, we have a connection back to the first segment from PBS. So there is a common theme going on here. All right.
We Can't Teach What We Don't Know by Gary Howard.
Okay, so next segment, I guess, still not giving us any results from their goals. Feedback from ESL Goal 1 representatives. Okay.
This year, our professional development sessions around CP&E were presented by staff members. So we feel that since the sessions were presented from colleague to colleague, that teachers were more willing to participate because they were working in smaller groups, and this promoted open and honest conversations.
Open and honest conversations, more willing to participate. If it is their job and the employer is saying so, do they have a choice in participation? I mean, you do hold their careers and their paychecks over their heads, so is there really wiggle room for free thinking here?
And we felt that through that, there was more interest in the diversity, especially here at Hatfield. We have a very diverse population of students.
You have a very diverse population of students, okay.
And having greater awareness. And also the takeaway would be from these sessions, possibly incorporating within their lesson plans some of the ideas and framework that we talked about.
You want to work into the lesson plans the framework of cultural competency, where you're taking into account, among other things, the race of the students in your assessment of expectations and curriculum. Okay.
And so we are really excited to continue with this journey of exploration that we began with our PD sessions, CPNE sessions. And we want to go deeper past that tip of the iceberg, which is basically, food and clothing and such, and explore a little more what diversity really means and how we can address this within our students, amongst ourselves as staff members, and in the community at large.
Why do you need to address it? I mean, I know it's an odd question. What if you, as public school teachers, educators, administrators, and so on, just let the kids express themselves as they will within reason, but otherwise teach them all along the same lines? Not elevate or denigrate anyone's culture or food or style or anything. Again, as long as it doesn't cause some kind of problem or disruption. Why not focus on the equality of a quality public education and not dwell on things that have nothing to do with that goal? Why don't you leave the cultural stuff and all of the other stuff that's not relevant immediately to the classroom, to the kids, to the parents, to their families? I mean, talking about different cultures, educating kids on different cultures is fine. Why do we need to dwell specifically on the students' differences themselves? And if that book that you're using to educate the teachers is any indication, how are you elevating and or celebrating white culture? And what does that even mean? What are you taking into account to accommodate white culture? Now, am I asking that question seriously? No, but these are the people that are bringing up race in relation to curriculum and framework and expectations. So I'd be curious to know. I'd still be curious to know what the results of all these efforts are.
While we've made a lot of progress this year in terms of professional development, we acknowledge that we have a lot more work to do next year.
Which means you have not reached any of the purported goals that you've put out there, even though you haven't told us what those goals actually are in any kind of metrics, just abstractions. So it's not working. After 3 years of doing what you've been doing, you're no closer to achieving the goal. And how do you measure the goal of knowledge in a teacher? How do you quantify the proficiency of a teacher's cultural understanding and responsiveness? I have a feeling you're not going to tell us how you're doing that, but I'm curious.
And we appreciate all the feedback from all of the participants in these professional development sessions.
Okay, on to goal number 2, increase representation of diverse students within gifted programming and higher level courses. Okay, and reduce the number of Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students who are disproportionately represented in special education programs and disproportionately suspended from school. Okay, well, okay, gifted programming. Right. So generally speaking, that usually means a child who has an advanced understanding of concepts, whether it be math or English or English insofar as like writing and reading comprehension, and so on. All right, who tests higher than your average student and may benefit from a more advanced learning environment. All right, that's usually what gifted means. Okay, so the goal is to increase representation of diverse students within gifted programming. Okay, so the metric is going to be the skin color of the student first and foremost in regards to a program that involves accelerated learning. Okay. Reduce the number of Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students who are disproportionately represented in special education programs. Okay, so how does that work? Unless, again, you're just going to take someone because of their skin color and make sure they're not placed into an education environment that might be more appropriate for them. Okay, and disproportionately suspended from school. So are you going to discipline more students of one demographic to balance out the number of students suspended from another demographic? Or are you going to set different standards for certain students based on their skin color to avoid the statistics of disproportionate suspension? You see, this is the problem when you whittle it down first and foremost to a concern about skin color. There's only so many ways you can achieve the goals you are listing unless you're going to be discriminating on the basis of skin color first and foremost. So I'm very curious to know how they have done with this second goal and what did they do to achieve it, if they have at all. Yes, silence.
Hello, we are the tri-chairs of disproportionality.
I'm sorry. That is such an unfortunate name. That sounds like the name of some made-up organization in a comic book or something. You know, we are the tri-chairs of disproportionality. Is there a Freudian slip in there somewhere?
I'm Tanya Swavely, principal of Inglewood.
I am Christina Carter, principal of A.M. Culp Elementary.
And hello, I am Mark Gosselin, supervisor of special education.
Goal 2 is to ensure proportionality of diverse student populations in gifted programs and reduce disproportionality in special education and suspensions.
Okay, that is the goal. Please do tell me what mechanisms you have introduced in attempting to achieve that goal. Please tell me.
And we'd like to share with you some of our accomplishments this year. One of the ones that we're first like to mention that we're very proud of is the creation of building middle school task forces. Also, our MTSS analysis shared with administrators during our monthly district admin meetings.
Whoa. Okay, they're flashing up charts and cards here that I don't have a chance to read. MTSS referral versus identification analysis. This is a comparison between the risk ratio, and you guys are educators, right? Okay. This is a comparison between the risk ratio for a subgroup of students being referred to MTSS process versus the risk ratio to student who are identified as special education in the group. I'm not even sure that that's okay. School. Okay, there's columns here. We have the top columns are Black, Hispanic, multiracial. Okay, and then the under columns are school, Black referral, Black IEP risk ratio, Hispanic referral, Hispanic IEP risk ratio. I have no idea what any of this means. Red blocks represent the schools who have a higher than 0.5 difference between the two risk ratios. Risk of how do you establish risk or assess risk? What does that mean? I don't know what any of this means, but I tried.
Shared with administrators during our monthly district.
Okay, and then we have another chart. Elementary school MTSS initial referrals by race by year. MTSS. Okay. Population referrals, all split amongst race. Apparently, population to referral are greater in the white column than any other column. But then I don't know what any of that means, so.
The admin meetings.
Some other accomplishments.
Wait, how? Hold on. Sorry, what was the accomplishment again?
Suspensions.
And we'd like to share with you some of our accomplishments this year. One of the ones that we're first like to mention that we're very proud of is the creation of building middle school task forces. Also, our MTSS analysis shared with administrators during our monthly district admin meetings.
So wait, your accomplishment is you created task forces and shared charts. Okay.
Some other accomplishments that we have is that we've done disproportionality presentations for each building to use during data retreat, staff and administration in services with a consultant, and utilizing building CP&E teams.
I have no idea what any of that means, and they flashed on some more charts that I'm not even going to bother going over because I'm pretty sure it won't tell me anything either. So goal 1, we didn't hear anything about accomplishments, but we did hear that they have a long way to go. Goal 2, we didn't hear anything about accomplishments, just that they formed teams and shared charts. And now we're on to goal 3. Remember, there's 4 goals. Okay, goal 3, implement practices that promote a pool of diverse candidates for positions across all employee groups. Implement practices that promote a pool of diverse candidates. Okay, so you're going to recruit based on skin color. Again, I don't know what the alternative is, if that is the goal.
Hello, North Penn family. My name is David Young, and I am one of the school climate coordinators here at North Penn.
Okay.
Dr. Mia Kim and I co-chair goal number 3 of the CP&E committee, which focuses on the hiring and retention of staff of color.
Well, at least you were more explicit about what you mean than the cue card was. Okay, so how do you recruit and retain staff of color?
Since the start of the current 3-year action plan, there has been a commitment to recruit, hire, and retain staff from diverse backgrounds.
So there's been a commitment to practice racial discrimination in your recruitment and hiring practices. I mean, you're saying it one way and I'm saying it another, but we both mean the same thing, don't we?
Some of the highlights of our goal are as follows. As a part of our Hire Your Own action item, every year since 2018, we have met with students from various culture clubs at the high school to discuss and promote education as a profession.
Okay. Fine. Promoting education as a profession. Okay. Wait, is that all you're doing? So, or at least, okay. So step 1, go to student groups in your own school or school district in high school and promote education as a profession, because conceivably those high school students are just a year or 2 away from going off to college and trying to pick a major and so on. Okay, but specifically you're going to culture groups in the high schools, and with your goal of trying to recruit and retain teachers of color, I'm assuming those culture groups are very specifically chosen. Okay.
Another part of this action item was the implementation of an Education 101 course, which could be taken for dual credit. This course served as an excellent entry point for education for our high school students.
What the goal isn't for educating high school students, the goal is to recruit and retain teachers of color or educators of color. So was this class open to all students or just specific students? I'm assuming all students, but that's not the goal, is it?
We have also implemented implicit bias training for all supervisory staff, hiring administrators, and some of our other staff.
Oh, right, because implicit bias is bad, but explicit bias, in that we're going to focus on recruiting people on the basis of their skin color, that's just fine and dandy.
This helps interviewers be aware of their own biases and evaluate the candidates objectively based on the established criteria.
The established criteria is we need more teachers of a particular race, or I should say not of a particular race. That's the established criteria. So yeah, we're not talking about implicit bias. You're right. Implicit bias really isn't on the table.
As a district, we continue to increase our diverse candidate pool and ultimately the diversity in staff by attending various recruitment fairs, such as the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence and Equity, the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Diversity Fair, Temple University, and the Villanova University Educators of Color, and the New England Minority Network, a national diversity and recruiting consulting firm.
Okay, so you're selecting where you're going to recruit from, what fairs you will attend, and so on, based on, at least implicitly, the nature of the race of the attendees. Okay. There was a whole bunch of cue cards there and flyers and such for the different organizations, but I will stipulate to everything that he just described. Goal number 4. All right, the last one. Goal number 4, increase student, staff, and family engagement in cultural proficiency efforts from a baseline determined in the 2018 to 2019 school year as measured by the Hanover Climate Survey. Engagement, cultural proficiency efforts from a baseline determined. Okay, so what was the baseline, I guess? And how did you measure the baseline? That one of my questions. What is the metric to determine someone's capacity or possession of cultural proficiency before they go through the training program? Silence, silence.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Taylor.
Hi.
And my name is Marjorie Dieg.
Hello.
We are the chairs of Goal 4.
Okay.
Goal 4 centers around increasing parent, guardian, student and staff engagement in cultural proficiency and equity.
Goal 4 is critical to this plan because it ties together the most important aspects surrounding culture and race in the community. Goal 4 centers around maintaining an open dialogue between the critical players, the district, parents, guardians, students, and the MPEN community.
I thought goal 4 was to increase proficiency, keeping communications open. What?
So some key highlights of Goal 4.
Okay.
We'll start with the Culture Proficiency and Equity Student Ambassadors Program. Our district has partnered with Cheltenham, Norristown, and Upper Dublin to bring students together to receive training in cultural proficiency and advocacy. Our student ambassadors use those skills that they learn in the training sessions to identify real-world problems in their respective school districts' communities and to offer solutions to those problems.
Okay, so the starting point is cultural proficiency training is good because it's good, even though we don't really know what it is yet except promoting racial evaluation, and you're going to teach the students. Okay.
Another highlight of Goal 4 is the Voices of Empowerment. The Voices of Empowerment is a student club at Penndale Middle School that celebrates diversity and is dedicated to racial justice and lifting Black, Indigenous, and people of color's voices in our school and district.
Okay, well, first question, because I don't know, is North Penn a public school district? It could be a private school district. I don't know. If it's not a public school district, then my next question kind of falls out of relevancy. But if North Penn is a public school district and thus receives federal funding, being a public school district in any way, shape, or form, or in fact, even if it's a private school district and receive federal funding of any kind, and you have a program set up specifically to benefit students based on their skin color or ethnic heritage, depending on how you want to look at it, you're breaking civil rights law. The Education Amendments of 1976, I think it was, at least. So,
we aim to empower our members to find their voices, to support one another, and to use their power for positive change.
That reminds me very, very distinctly of something that I looked at early on in my YouTube career, and that was something called the Boom Experience at a school district in Washington State that announced a program, a conference specifically for, what was it, Black, Latinx, and Indigenous students, male students. That was the other thing too. They made it specifically about male students. Yeah, I have a little playlist about that on my channel. You have to look into the playlist tab, and then you probably have to click on the created playlists link to find it, because YouTube likes to hide playlists. And somewhere in there should be the Down the Rabbit Hole, the Boom Experience playlist. Very interesting story. And my first sort of investigative set of videos. Probably one of my only set of investigative videos. But yeah, go take a look at that if you're curious about that. That reminded me very distinctly of the Boom Experience and the same questions that brought about in me.
Parents and equity. This year, North Penn parents came together and created Parents in Equity, a parent-led group that focuses on collaborating with district admin, school buildings, and neighboring communities.
What do the school buildings have to say? I know, it was a cheap shot.
Black History Month videos. During Black History Month, our district was creative in sharing highlights that were not only historical in nature, but also involved a community perspective. During Black History Month, North Penn community members were highlighted for their contributions to the North Penn community.
Okay.
Time for dinner.
What?
This past year, Dr. Bauer and I created a spinoff from his previous podcast, Bauer Hour. This podcast centered around the necessary conversations about race, culture, equity, and education.
So starting a podcast is a part of the goal? I mean, what happened to the whole baseline thing? You took a baseline from 2018 to 2019. What was the baseline? How did you measure this baseline of cultural proficiency across staff, students, and families? And based on that baseline, where are you at now, 2 years or 2.5 years down the road? Creating podcasts and setting up meetings doesn't really sound like advancement, unless you're going to tell us where you started from.
Purposefully named Time for Dinner, this podcast replicates the open, candid, and vulnerable conversations that are typically held at home around the dinner table.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. The whole around the dinner table thing, I had a hard time sort of empathizing with the notion of having open, hard conversations around my dinner table as a family. That dinner time was usually for dinner time, not for long discussion. I mean, again, every household's different. Maybe I just was, maybe I was just deprived as a child. I don't know.
As you can see, we've come a long way in our efforts to make North Penn even better.
No, I haven't seen anything. You haven't shown me any advancement of anything. You've shown me charts and statistics and talked about abstractions and non sequiturs. You haven't said, here's where we began and here's where we are. So far, I've heard we haven't made as much achievement or progress as we'd like to in the first instance. In the second goal, you talked about starting up, what was it, action groups and things. And there's sirens in the background because this is live television. Go away. Okay. Now go away now. I said go away. Not for crying out loud. Oh boy. My kingdom for an edit button live in reality. The joys of living both near to both the highway patrol office and a fire station. It's like on the one hand, it's like, hey, I'm within the zone of safety should something terrible happen, conceivably. On the other hand, there's that. I lost my train of thought, but either way, yeah, the second goal, you talked about forming task forces and having meetings or sharing charts. Third goal, I didn't hear anything really interesting. And fourth goal, a podcast and starting meetings. You've presented nothing of advancing towards your goals at all. And your goals weren't even that well stated.
We are proud of the accomplishments that you will hear about today, but certainly acknowledge how far we still have to go on our journey.
Journey towards what?
To being culturally proficient.
If you're not going to define what that looks like, if you're not going to define how you measure starting from point A and reaching point C, then I don't know what you mean.
According to Lindsay, Robbins, and Terrell, 2003, cultural proficiency is essential in establishing a positive school climate so that students, parents, staff, and community members from a variety of cultural, ethnic, economic, and religious backgrounds can interact with and learn from one another.
Why can't you just let that happen on its own? And is that really the responsibility of a public education system? And again, if North Penn is a private school district and takes no federal funding and is in its own thing, then I walk it back. I'll take that back. I don't know off the top of my head. But shouldn't the teachers be focused on the academic achievement of the students first and foremost? Making a school a welcoming place, I get it. But there's a balance between making it a welcoming place and saying that certain races need help and certain races need to be excluded because of their race.
As we send our graduates off to college or their careers, our hope is that they value diversity and respect one another.
Okay. I made an executive decision as the course of this video went. I've decided not to cover the third video because the more I thought about it, I was like, it kind of highlights an individual person that was just doing an assignment for something, as far as I can tell, and doesn't really reflect an institution or a program or anything else. And so I'm going to refrain from going to the third video. So I apologize for the false advertisement in the sense that it was going to be a triple feature. But yeah, the more I thought about it as the last several minutes have gone on, I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. So I'm going to call it there as far as the double feature. So apologies for that. But what did we learn about cultural proficiency and competency in these two videos about a broad-based program in California and one in North Penn, wherever that is? Not much. Throughout the entire PBS segment, the only thing I drew from that is that I'm being told that students will achieve greater educational outcomes as a plane flies overhead. I don't know if you can hear that one. You can hear the sirens, but... Oh, live television. That students will achieve better educational outcomes based on the skin color of the teacher, and that occasionally throwing in culturally or linguistically relevant phrases to story problems is something that kids recognize. But again, just to be a broken record, the only thing I could think of from the lessons or the problems cited by the PBS segment was that the solution to the achievement and opportunity gaps in schools is to racially segregate students and teachers so that everybody has the best chance of achievement, because the best chance of achievement comes when your teacher looks like you. And that recruiting efforts need to be focused in on race. And that was something that carried over into the North Penn example, where very explicitly one of the team leaders, the goal leaders, said, we're here to increase the number of educators of color. Okay. And as far as I can tell, out of all of the leaders of all of the goals, that was the only statement of a concrete, actionable goal, a goal you could conceivably measure, that was ever given. Everything else was just abstractions and high-level ideas and, I don't know, just some kind of amorphous notion of what cultural proficiency is and that we need to increase it. But we don't know how or if we've increased it because we're not willing to verify or determine what the baseline of achievement is, first and foremost. It just... Okay, well, let me just say that the idea that students will benefit from a teacher that looks like them is nothing new. And whether that idea has been wrapped in the phrase of cultural proficiency or not, I have heard it expressed many, 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 many times in my Curriculum of Fear series and elsewise, as any of you who have watched my videos for some time might know. So that's not a new idea. Does that tie into critical race theory? Well, given the elements of what's being promoted here, And given what I have learned from the critical race theory panelists at Oregon State University back in 2010, yes, this does not encompass all of critical race theory, but it is definitely an element thereof, wherein there is a notion ahead of time that students need to be evaluated and treated and taught differently based on skin color. That accommodations need to be made for the visibility of skin color in students' lives so that they can feel comfortable in a learning environment. Because as we know, all students are inherently racist and could not learn any better from a white teacher than they could from a teacher of color. And I cringe internally when using those terms because it harkens back to the worst parts of our history with drinking fountains, if you'll forgive the very blunt metaphor. So I'll take a couple of questions if you guys have anything else to say or anything to add, and then I'll wrap this up for a Sunday, because I'm sure there's other things we can do with our Sunday than expose ourselves to continuing nonsensical virtue signaling. But hey, that's what I choose to do every other day or so. Let's see. And from the chat, oh, thank you, Keeverdam. Scribes Down the Rabbit Hole playlist. Thank you, Keeverdam. Appreciate it. Yes, one of my earliest YouTube efforts, and honestly, one of the more interesting sort of follow the clues things I've ever done on YouTube, because it was very, very interesting. A lot of interesting characters and information I came across just accidentally, just by happenstance. I watched one video, got curious about one person in that video, and everything kind of fell into place from there. It was a real big learning experience for me. It really was. Let's see. Mr. United for the Children. Thanks, Scribelight, for the great stream. Everyone have a great Sunday. Well, thank you for coming, Mr. United. Appreciate it. Let's see. And Brigid. My idea of cultural proficiency is being able to understand why a different culture evolved to be that way. That's one way of looking at it. You know, I mean, when I first heard the terms cultural proficiency or cultural competence, my first thought was to a cultural studies program or degree or something, you know, learning about different cultures. But in this iteration, you as a teacher have to assume to know the culture or the temperament or the language or the way of thinking of a student based on their skin color and behave appropriately. I mean, that is what I'm getting from this. If I am incorrect in that assessment, I'm happy to be corrected. But that's all I'm hearing here, at least implicitly. Not so implicitly is the fact that the skin color of the teacher, first and foremost, is important. I definitely got that from both presentations. So, not quite sure what else to say on that one. And let's see. Keeverdam Scribelight just wondering, should Mr. Tickletrunk get a wrench since he accidentally timed out by yours truly on Thursday? Should Mr. Tickletrunk get a wrench for being the victim of someone else's mistake? Should I apologize to Mr. Tickletrunk because someone else made a boo-boo? I don't know. That is a question for the universe. I'll have to consider it, because I don't know. I'll think about it. We'll see. Chicago, my scribe. Anyway, we can get back our hour lost watching this video. Not yours, of course. Well, this is my video. No, Mike, I cannot give you back your hour. I'm sorry. Like, the time cops are coming right now. I thought about it for a second, and the sacred timeline was almost violated. So the TVA, well, they were on their way, but they decided to go away now because I changed my mind. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, you're probably better off. Anyway. Keeverdam, just curious. I apologize to him and everyone else. Well, anyone who knows you knows it was a mistake. Does that mean Mr. Tickle Trunk gets some kind of reward for it? By the way, just as an aside, I don't give out wrenches as rewards or as some kind of elevation that someone's more important than someone else. I will just occasionally randomly throw one or two out to people who have been around a long time. If you've been around a long time, you don't have a wrench. It's not that I think less of you or something. It's just sort of occasional thing that I do, but that's just it. You know, I don't want to start a status system in the chat. And if anybody started waving around their wrench like it made them important, I'd probably take it away. So there you go. But I have faith in all of you over the years that that's not how we operate here. So anyway, everyone, there you go. I apologize again, slightly truncated from what I promised, but the more I thought about it, I was like, I'd rather cover organizations and groups than I would like to focus in on an individual talking about a class that they're taking. I don't think that's fair. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. Just sometimes my reach exceeds my grasp in the moment. So that all being said, everyone, thank you again for joining me. Moderators, those of you that have wrenches, thank you so much for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. And speak of the devil, Mr. Tickle Trunk with the bye-bye Dog Cat Fox. Oh, Dog Cat Fox, I haven't brought you up yet today. Wowie, wow, wow. All right, well, there's Dog Cat Fox. And Mr. Tickle Trunk, I will consider your being wrenched, which has kind of an innuendo connotation to it the way I say it like that way, another time. Everyone who donated as well, thank you so much. So very much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find us tomorrow night on Satsu 2 Cents' channel, conceivably. And I say that because Satsu's still recovering from his hospital trip. So keep an eye on Twitter. Keep an eye on Twitter tomorrow for any updates. We'll probably be out on Lords of the Night tomorrow night, Satsu's channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we'll talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, and what we've been up to on the internets, and then your questions. Everyone, thank you again so much for joining me. Really do appreciate it. These little sojourns into confusion would not be what they are without you with me. I hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon and stay cool. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.